Welcome, or welcome back to Game of Fangs and Thrones. My name's Hannah, and this is the third episode of Read 9 by 1. So, I think by now you know how this works and why I created it. But basically, I'm trying to read all of my TBR, which, as you can see, are the books where you can't see the title details, so you can only see the pages. And there are quite a few, and to do that, and curb my book buying habit, so combine the two, we came up with Read 9 by 1. I see why it was made. No one else was involved in this, and most of the books that I am buying going forward will be Kindle books. And so there are a couple of rules with this series, this challenge I've set myself. One, I'm only allowed to buy one book for every 9 I read. That can include Kindle Unlimited, physical, digital. I'm not really an audiobook girl, but if I do get the urge, I'll count them in the 9. That's rule 1. Rule 2, I'm not allowed to start a new series or buy a standalone until I have finished a previous series. So you'll see the Dragon Realms series by Katie and Kevin Sang. If I was to finish that, I could start a new series. But if I was just reading the first book and then reading, Name of the Wind for number 9, because I hadn't finished that series or caught up with the books that were published, I can't start a new one. I have to buy a book of an ongoing series that I'm reading. So Kindle books, Kindle Unlimited books, I haven't quite figured out what I'm doing with them yet, but probably the same idea, so I'm not borrowing as many as I have currently. So, diving right into the 9, number 1 is Murder at the Village Fate by Catherine Coles. This is a KU book, so I'll probably pop it in the picture in this corner. But basically, this is a cozy mystery following Evelyn and Tommy as they inherit a manor from Tommy's parents, I think, and solve crimes. Now, this is the second in the series, and I'll read out the blurb. Downtown Abbey crossed with murder, she wrote. Set in a Yorkshire village, Evelyn Christie, the new Lady Northmore, is looking forward to hosting the local village fete in the grounds of Herslem Howell. However, the last thing she expects to see on the morning of the fete is the local member of Parliament face down in the stream at the edge of the lawn. Evelyn and her husband Tommy are again called into action to find the dastardly murderer before he strikes again. And then it just goes on to say, if you enjoy the glamour of bygone eras like 1920s Downton Abbey and the gentle cosy mysteries set in the English countryside, you will love this new series. And yes, they are comfortable mysteries. They are cozy. They do what they say on the tin. So this got a 3-star in the end. Nothing wrong with it. And I will be continuing with the series. I think there is 4 or 5. And I mean, Murder at the Manor got a 3-star from me as well, I think. But they are fun. I do use the Corpal rating system by G of Book Roast, in case anybody's interested. But character's got a 7. It's Evelyn's story basically, but she's great. She does remind me of like an English Jessica Fletcher, or like a younger Miss Marple. Atmosphere was a 6. Not sure what the vibes were supposed to be, but I did get a summer afternoon, and maybe it's because we don't actually have village fates where I am. I'm not in a village, so I can't really say for that. But I have been to countryside fairs, things like that before, and yes, the vibe was there. So I got 6. Writing, 5. It was nothing special, simple, and some of it made Evelyn is middle-aged, but it did make her read a bit immature and younger at times, but it was still enjoyable. Plot 6. It was engaging, it hit the right beats, and it definitely seemed inspired by something that Agatha Christie would come up with for Marple. Just the right amount of murder, mystery, and the overall storyline of Christie, the Christies coming into their own roles. I forgot what she was called there. And Evelyn's marital duties to give Tommy kids. Intrigue was definitely a 6. And I gave this a 6 because even though I read it all in one sitting, because it's short and it is quick and it's compulsively readable, I don't think I would have been as intrigued if I had to put it down and come back to it. Logic 8, nothing really pulled me out too much. And I give enjoyment a 7, and I wrote a little thing. Didn't expect this to be a 5-star, and I think that's why I enjoy the series so much. I don't go into it expecting much. They're fun little mysteries where the stakes never felt too high. It's a pop cult movie and a book. Basically, you're just reading it to read. But Evelyn is adorable. She's cute. But if I read too much of these at once, it might lose the interest in the series. And that, I think that still stands, considering I read that in June. Then we go back into physical books. We have Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. I gave this a 3-star in the end. I didn't quite get where it was supposed to be going. Characters 8, atmosphere 8. The writing was a 4. I did not gel with the writing at all. It just seemed a little bit flat. Couldn't get into it straight away. I didn't find it a particularly beautiful style, but it was technically a well-crafted writing style. Plot 7. It felt fast-paced, well thought out, well researched, because there is elements, I'll tell you what's about in a minute, but there are elements of an Aztec, very old native colony, not colony, it's the wrong word, cultural and civilization in here. So it did feel very well researched and very well grounded in the monetary system used, some of the cultural aspects, and I did love the end. It was such a twist. 7 for intrigue. It dipped, I'm not gonna lie. I think in these days, if a book holds my interest the whole way through, then it's a good book. It's gonna get more than a 4. Enjoyment 6. Part of it I enjoyed, didn't love it. Times I was bored and didn't quite understand some of the choices that the characters were making, and I was annoyingly confused about a particular character. They are gender neutral. That's not what confused me, so it gets points on that scale. But it's what that character is in terms of, are they antagonist, protagonist, morally grey? I just couldn't get my head around that, and it was confusing me. But I'll read the synopsis now, which I should have done to start with. But a god will return when the earth and sky converge under the Black Sun in the holy city of Tova. The winter solstice is usually a time for celebration and renewal, but this year it coincides with a solar eclipse, a rare celestial event prescribed by the Sun Priest as an unbalancing of the world. Meanwhile, a ship launches from a distant city bound for Tova and set to arrive on the solstice. The captain of the ship, Exalia, is a disgraced teak whose song can calm the waters around her as easily as it can warp a man's mind. Her ship carries one passenger, described as harmless. The passenger, Serapio, is a young man, blind, scarred, and cloaked in destiny. As Exalia well knows, when a man is described as harmless, he usually ends up being the villain, crafted with unforgettable characters. I agree. Rebecca Roanhorse's epic adventure, exploring the decadence of power amidst the weight of history and the struggle of individuals, swimming against the confines of society and their broken pasts. It's the most original series debut of the decade. I don't agree with that last bit, but the characters were unforgettable. They had their own flaws, they had their own backstory, they had their own voice. It is a series, and I probably will continue. It's just not top of the list. Then we have a standalone, which is The Light of Prague by Nicole Jarvis. In the quiet streets of Prague, all manner of mysterious creatures lurk in the shadows. Unbeknownst to its citizens, their only hope against the tide of predators are the dauntless lamplighters, secret elite monster hunters whose light staves off the darkness each night. And then it goes on, but I'm not going to read this forever. But basically, in this one, we follow Domek, who is a lamplighter, who leads a life teeming with fraught encounters with the worst kind of evil, Peerfish, which are like Prague's answer to vampires, and Domek has a friend called Lady Aura Fitzarova, and she's a widow, and she is a Peerfish. So they do have a relationship. It's friendly at first, but then Domek and Aura find themselves on opposite sides of the struggle, and things happen. Domek also finds himself stalked by the spirit of the White Lady who haunts Prague Castle, and stumbles across the sentient essence of a will-o'-the-wisp. Now, there is also somebody in this book who is trying to control the will-o'-the-wisps for their power. So this ended up with a 4-star. Characters got 7. Atmosphere, writing, atmosphere 10. I've been to Prague. I felt like I was back there. It was just brilliant. The writing was 9. Simple, effective. We get this into perspective, Aura and Domek, and the writing style for each character fits the character. Aura's is a very feminine feel, very elegant, not overly written, but it has that classical feel to it of an educated lady. Domek's is a bit more brutal and to the point. Simple, but not stupid. That's what I wrote. And it fits the tone and history of Prague and the time scale because it's like Victorian-esque. And plot 7. Very fast-paced, but felt drawn out at times. Loved how it ended, but it felt a bit laboured. I think it could have ended a little bit sooner. Intrigue 7. I absolutely adored learning about the politics of this world, because we have the lamplighters with their code, and then we have the Peerfish with their code and their politics, and there was elements of the Ministry of Defence getting involved. But I was confused about some things. The alchemy magical system in this made sense, and finding the characters' reactions to everything felt right as well. The city of Prague lends itself to the Gothic, and this helped, but I was confused at points. It still stands. 7 for enjoyment, so overall that gave me a 4-star. And I think that was a debut, but I'm not 100%. And then we go into July, so the next books are from July. We finished The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This got 4-star, and I'm not going to tell you about it because I think this is doing the rounds again. But basically, we follow Rand al'Thor in a world where good and evil are perpetually in motion, and certain aspects of the past are doomed to repeat itself. But in the last couple of years, or cycles, evil seems to be winning. Then comes along this prophesized hero, the Dragon Reborn, and the wheel is tending to tip into the light or the good's favour. We follow Rand and his band of friends as he discovers what the heck is going on. Now, I know people don't like Rand, but to me, it was okay. And maybe that's because his perspective was diluted by the rest. I'm very intrigued in Perrin. If you know, you know, but you have a little hint on my arm. That's all I'm saying. If you know, you know. Comment, put the wolf dog emoji down below if you know what I mean by Perrin and his story. I'm very intrigued. This felt like a comfortable fantasy, not in the same way that the cozy mystery felt comfortable, but this felt comfortable as it's familiar. This is probably what some of my favourite tropes are based on, and we have a very deliberate hero's journey in this. We know where, if you read fantasy, you tend to know where this one's going. Most fantasies have that element, and it's the magic system, the world, the villain that make it unique. And I am very, very intrigued with what happens next. So it's got a 4 star. I couldn't get a 5 because I didn't really enjoy the writing. It felt dry, and it was just, it felt dated. It felt like a 90s book. But I'm still going to continue with the series. I got 4 star. Then we have Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong. This is the sequel to Our Violent Delights, set in 1920s Shanghai on the edge of a revolution. But within that we have it's a Romeo and Juliet retelling. So I think that tells you how this is going to end. It got 4 stars. And I completed this duology. So, why did this get... Well, I can't talk too much about it because it is a sequel, but it was a solid sequel and conclusion to a duology. I did like the end. It had me gripped. I didn't realise how much I cared for these characters until the end, which is always a nice surprise when if something bad happens or something good happens. But characters 10, they definitely carried this story for me. Atmosphere 7, just didn't feel it. It could have been anyway. Plot, writing 8, easy enough style, and each POV, because we get more than just Roma and Juliet in this, felt distinct. And 9, we kind of... It's a Romeo and Juliet retelling. You kind of have an inkling of how this is going to end, but the character growth to get them from where they started, every character, every protagonist went through some amazing growth. And from where they started in Our Violent Delights to where they end in Our Violent Ends, the growth was exceptional and it was very well done, especially for Roma and Juliet. They gave up everything. Gets me every time. But I couldn't give it a 5 because I lost enjoyment a lot. Enjoyment only got 5, which is a shame. Then Summerween started. So I read some comics. I read volume 3 of Lock and Key by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez. This got a 5 star. This was amazing. If you don't know, Lock and Key follows the Lock children and is the basis for the Netflix TV show, which pretty much says it all. 3 kids see their father brutally murdered and end up back at his family home, where the youngest, Bodhi, starts finding keys and accidentally lets loose a demon onto the world. This is brilliant. The art is just stunning. It's very brutal though, and there are very dark aspects of this. Major trigger warning for self-harm and suicidal ideas of suicide and self-harm. But it got 5 stars. It pretty much dove me right back into the world after a break that was longer than I wanted. Then we have Saga Volume 10, and this was a disappointment. This got 3 stars. But if you didn't know, Saga is the sweeping tale of a girl named Hazel and her ever-evolving family. Basically, this is Hazel. She's telling the story. This is her mother, and her father isn't on the cover, but her mother and father started this on opposite sides of a war, and I'm sorry about the wind if you can hear it. But her mother and father fell in love, and basically Hazel should not exist. She's hunted by like pretty much everyone, but everyone who meets Hazel falls in love with her and yeah. This, maybe it's just because there was that year or so hiatus between volume 9 and volume 10, but this just didn't hit the spot. It got a 3-star. But I mean, following a 5-star anything is always hard, so that might have played a part. But Saga volume 10 got a 3-star, which is disappointing, but not every installment of a however long comic book series is going to be a 5-star. You are going to have filler, and that felt fillery. Then we have Nothing More to Tell by Karen M. McManus. This is following Bryn as she solves a murder, a decades-old, not decades-old murder, but like 4-year-old murder of her favourite school teacher. She has left the school because of her dad's job and is now back and has got an internship with a popular that wind is getting worse. A popular true crime show called Motive, and as part of her interview and her internship, she is investigating the death of Mr. Larkin. Now, it was ruled an accident, a drifter killed him, but she's not so sure, especially as 3 people in the school found his body, and they've kept quiet about what happened that day ever since. So this got 4-star. I'm not quite sure. Oh, it was enjoyment. That's what let this one down. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would, but then again, it's a thriller. I don't really read thrillers that often. And then we have book 9, which was Mina and the Slayers by Amy McCord, the sequel to Mina and the Undead. This is set in New Orleans in the 90s and is full of 90s references and nostalgia that take me back to a childhood I didn't know I remembered. For context, I was born in 94 in England, so we got the 90s stuff from America's a little bit later than America did. But basically, this was mostly 7s and 6s on the quartile scale. It was fun, I just didn't love it. I like 3-star ratings because they're comfortable, but it doesn't really mean I can tell you much, especially since this is a sequel. But it is another duology finished. So, what did I buy? It was a Kindle book, It was a Kindle book, and I succumbed to the hype. Because 1, dragons, 2, dragons, 3, dragons. That'll give you a hint as to what this book is. But basically, I downloaded Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Very intrigued in this because of dragons and the disability rep. I believe our main character has what we would call Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a pain condition that affects your joints. You are very susceptible to dislocations, internal complications, and pain. Now, I have joint hypermobility syndrome, which is very similar to Ehlers-Danlos, but it mainly affects my joints, so I don't have to deal with the internal complications. And I touch wood, I haven't had a dislocation or a subluxation, but I'm still interested to see how this goes. So I'll just read the Amazon synopsis. Welcome to the brutal and elite world of Basagath War College, where everyone has an agenda and every night could be your last. 20-year-old Violet Sorrengail. Oh, so it's young adult. It's new adult rather than young adult. That's cool. 20-year-old Violet Sorrengail was supposed to enter the scribe quadrant, living a quiet life among books and history. My kind of girl. Now, the commanding general, also known as her toughest Talon's mother, has ordered Violet to join the hundreds of candidates starting to become the elite of Navarre, dragon riders. But when you're smaller than everyone else and your body is brittle, death is only a heartbeat away. Because dragons don't bond to fragile humans, they incinerate them. With fewer dragons willing to bond than cadets, most would kill Violet to better their own chances of success. The rest would just kill her for being her mother's daughter, like Xaden Riosen, the most powerful and ruthless wing leader in the Riders Quadrant. She'll need every edge her wits give her just to see the next sunrise. Yet, with every day that passes, the war outside grows more deadly, the kingdom's protective wards are failing, and the death toll continues to rise. Even worse, Violet begins to suspect leadership is hiding a terrible secret. Alliances will be forged, lives will be lost, traitors will become allies, or even lovers. But sleep with one eye open, because once you enter, there are only two ways out. Graduate or die. And this is a planned duology with Iron Flame, I think it's the sequel's called, and that's due out in September. So I'm very intrigued. So I just need to update my reading jar and then we can go. But let me know what you've been reading. Let me know if you've read any of the books down below, and if you know about why I'm intrigued with Perrin, again, from Eye of the World. Drop that wolf or dog emoji in the comments down below. But please beware of the spoiler monkeys. We don't want spoilers in the chat. Just let people know if you are going to do a spoiler. And let me know if you've read these books, if you agree, if you disagree, what you've been reading, what you've been buying, and I'll see you in the next one. So with that, give this video a like if you like it, and hit that subscribe button if you want to see this, talk about these, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.